Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Three Tickets Please. This is our second episode. Today, we're going to be talking about Shogun. In my opinion, one of the best shows that has come out so far in 2024. Nick, Jack, let's fucking begin.
Yeah, what up?
Hello, I'd like to apologise first because this episode should have been done weeks ago. I've been having technical difficulties and throwing tantrums left, right, and centre. So thank you to you two for being patient, and a huge thank you to Jenny at Microsoft, who seems to have fixed it all for me. Yeah. So I'm very sorry, but yeah, Shogun. Oh my god,
Spoilers,
I've
by
loved
the
it.
way.
Spoilers, yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I absolutely fucking love this series. It's a shame that it's only a mini series. I know there's been some news about that, so we'll talk about that in a bit.
Yeah.
It's a shame just because very selfishly I've enjoyed it, but it is one of those things that I think perhaps needed to be a mini series. Jack, you've read the book, so I'm very curious to hear what you think. And then Mike, I feel like we bullied you into watching it, but it was the right thing to have done.
Yeah,
I'm very
for
happy.
sure.
Great,
Yeah.
good, because
I'm
I
a
love a
happy
bit of peer
bully
pressure.
victim.
Excellent. Jack, local idiot. I've just noticed that. Brilliant. Yeah, you. From your point of view, as someone who has read the book, what were your thoughts of this, and how loyal was it to the source material?
Honestly, before I start, I've been a very big like Band of Brothers advocate for a really long time, where I've been saying that that's my favorite miniseries ever, and I've been saying that since it came out. This is the first time that a show has come out where, and it's going to have to do the thing where it like stands the test of time, which I do think is really important for a show's overall quality. This is the first time in a very long time that I would say it rivals my favorite miniseries of all time, other than the fact that yes, it obviously has recent news saying there's apparently a season 2 and 3, and like you said, we'll discuss that later. But it was honestly pretty loyal to source material. There was obviously a huge change in that in the book. Blackthorn is the biggest, like he's the protagonist. He has his hand in like a whole lot more stuff. And in this series, they've kind of made it more of an ensemble cast instead of focusing specifically on him. But overall, as an overall like storytelling, uh, I really thought that it was maybe not better, but in terms of translating a book to a show, I think that really did a phenomenal job. Um, and like I enjoyed the hell out of this show. I'm going to be very honest with you. And I was sad when it ended, but regardless, yes, I enjoyed the hell out of the show, and I am looking forward to dipping our toes back in potentially. We'll see. Anyways, Big Mike, what was your overall opinion of the show?
I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed it from beginning to end. The whole journey that Blackthorn goes through, his relationship with Mariko, is that how you say her name?
Mariko, yeah.
Yeah, Mariko. I wasn't really like I'm not. I love history. I don't know much about Japanese history. I didn't know that the Portuguese were there. I didn't know that they were Catholic Japanese lords, and I thought that that was really interesting. Like just to learn about that, like how the Europeans got there to begin with, and how they pretty much also lied to Japan. Portugal pretty much lied and said that, like, yeah, the whole world is ours. This is Japan, and everything else is ours. When
Right.
meanwhile there was other nations, and they only said, oh, there's only Catholicism. When meanwhile there's other denominations of Christianity that they haven't even like introduced. And Blackthorn really brings like this whole different perspective to the Japanese, and that's what I really love about his character, is that like he like sticks out so much like a sore thumb, but like at the same time, um I feel like he ends up belonging so much with the Japanese. And what I found funny about him is that he was like, oh, I'm not dying in this foreign land. I'm not dying in this foreign land. But then he literally, at one point of the show, spoiler alert, was like, I'll kill myself. He
You
was
live and
ready
you
to kill
die.
himself.
Fuck it.
Right. But
Yeah.
but like it just goes to show how much he's changed like over the course of the show. And I know you mentioned before that like the book is more centered around the point of view of Blackthorn, and you can clearly see that's where like most of the icing on the cake with the writing comes from.
Mhm.
Because I imagine in the book you just see everything from his point of view. You really don't know what everybody else is up to. You kind of just see everything from his lens. I like though that the show was able to introduce, the other characters and show everything for their point of views. Like obviously Lord Toranaga. I mean, that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, what an incredible character. I mean, just everything about the show. I'm really excited to go into it.
Since you're
Nikki,
talking about him, by the way, just to jump in, I'm really glad that Hiroyuki Sanada is really getting his like time in the sun as an
Yeah.
actor, because he's been the samurai in everything forever. He
I
was
agree.
even Scorpion in the Mortal Kombat movies, and like regardless, that movie was not that good, but he was fucking good in it. So
Yeah,
I'm really happy that he's doing really well for himself, and I'm so glad that this show took off the way that it has, because I think he deserves it. He's put a lot of effort into all this stuff.
yeah, he did. He,
Anyways,
Nikki. So, what do you think about the show?
I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I've always enjoyed sort of like Japanese history and that kind of thing, but I've never really known enough about it. So it's been really useful to have Jack explain things. But I'm going to say this, and people are not going to agree with me. And obviously, I have the copy of Shogun here. I'm going to read it. It's a chunky boy.
yeah.
So it's on my list of things to read. Obviously, I have read A Song of Ice and Fire, and I love A Song of Ice and Fire. I honestly think I preferred Shogun to Game of Thrones. I can't compare the books, obviously, but just the storytelling
Oh, that's
and
surprising to hear about.
yeah, well, I think my thing is, excuse me, I think the way a lot of the characters, and this is where it's very, very difficult for me to actually draw a real comparison. I think the way that a lot of the characters from A Song of Ice and Fire are sort of shown in A Game of Thrones is not a great representation. It's not necessarily an accurate representation. I won't bore you to death by going into detail. I think certainly a lot of the female characters, the way that they're portrayed on screen is it takes away a lot of the agency and the cunning and the behind the scenes planning that the characters are getting up to in A Song of Ice and Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas when you look at a character like Mariko, who is, I would say, maybe an accurate portrayal of Japanese women in that time, she is a wife. And she's beholden to her husband, she's beholden to her lord, but she has a lot of agency and she commands a lot of respect. And I don't want we're not going to devolve this into a political I can't talk today, a political conversation. But it's because she works hard to maintain her status, because she knows what she's doing. And at no point do I ever feel like that character is sort of overly sexualized. She's just a very interesting and compelling character, and I fucking loved her. And you know what I'm like with female characters, I call it the Ellen Ripley benchmark, and Mariko meets that. She's incredible, so I can't wait to read her character in the book. But overall, yeah, I mean, I didn't realize that Blackthorn is based on a real person, very loosely. But the the sort of behind the scenes politicking that's happening, and for example, Toranaga, right at the end when his true intentions are revealed, that's like oh my god,
Totally.
And it's genius.
Totally.
And
That
I
was
love
a big
it.
reveal too, and I really loved
Yeah.
Yabushige, the guy that did not have the bald spot on his head. When he turns and smiles at him, like he knew. I don't know. I thought that was a really nice moment for him, like a
Yeah.
good little last laugh, because he understood that
Yeah.
Toranaga was just like another one of these samurai feudal lords that just wanted to become shogun.
Oh
So
yeah,
so sick. I love that. I love this show. I was so impressed with it.
One of the things that kind of really struck me, I suppose, about this show is just the overall look and feel of it. Even like the opening sequence, it just sets the scene. The acting was incredible. I think there were a lot of unknowns sort of cast in it, sort of fresh faces, and that was really, really nice to see.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, everything just kind of felt realistic. Everything just flowed very, very nicely. At no point did I ever kind of feel like the immersion had been broken.
Right.
And again, I think Game of Thrones is probably a good example of this when we get to season 8. And suddenly everybody's acting very, very out of character, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Season 7 kind of as well.
well, yeah, that's a whole
Anyways,
different episode
yeah,
for a different day.
fair.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, the whole way through, I think the acting was consistent, the sort of scenery, cinematography, special effects, everything. It was a pleasure to watch. And so yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
And
Since you the what?
the arcs, like the story arcs.
Oh yeah.
The
Well,
beginning
the
Yes.
was
pacing I thought was excellent in general. Every episode
Mhm.
kept my interest the entire time, and I thought that they all were interesting in themselves. There wasn't really like a down, like a filler kind of an episode. It all felt like it was just really well paced the whole time.
I agree.
Yeah.
What were you gonna say
So,
before?
Oh, since you said that we got a whole bunch of like fresh faces as actors in there, I really appreciated that. Um, I think that a lot of shows and movies nowadays force too many well-known faces because like, oh, they're a brand, we're going to use their
yeah.
brand to generate hype, and then that's literally all that they do. I really apprecited that they went, because the only person that I think I recognized in this show at all was Sonata, or Sonata, or however the hell you pronounce his name. um but everyone else like blew me away. I didn't like Blackthorn at first. I thought his voice was a little too piratey for me, but by episode 2 I was already like totally down. I really, I thought he, honestly, I've never seen him
He
in
grew
anything.
on me.
He blew me away. I was
Yeah.
very impressed with him.
Wasn't his character meant to be a pirate?
Yes, I understand that, but I mean, like, just in terms of like stereotypical pirates,
No, I hear you.
like
Yes.
yar, something like that.
Yeah.
By the
But
way, Blackthorn is loosely based on William Adams.
okay,
He was
That's it. Thank
yeah.
you.
cool, yeah, good looking out. That's a good shout
So
out.
speaking of characters, okay, let's start with Blackthorn. So let's talk about Blackthorn because Jack, as you say, you weren't a huge fan of him in the beginning. I feel like there's a lot of character development here, and I
Oh
know we're
yeah,
going to talk about costumes later, but I think that's very, very. I think his costumes throughout the series are very reflective of his opinion, and even his status, I suppose. Like you saying, Mike, he very much starts off as, "Oh, I don't want to be here. I just want to get home," but he kind of assimilates, willfully or not, into that society and culture.
Mhm.
So yeah, let's talk about that. Jack, what are your thoughts?
that's one thing that I actually always really appreciate about samurai media in general is I like that because it's so vastly different from everywhere else in the world at the time. I really like that people come in and don't understand it at first, and they think that it's, he calls them savages, he calls them barbarians or whatever, even though they're doing the same thing. But I really love when they kind of slowly start to understand their customs and their beliefs, and then by the end you realize that they're very cool and interesting and like honorable people. And I really like they did the same thing in The Last Samurai. um I really enjoy that, and like you said, even in terms of costumes where he kind of slowly starts integrating more, and even like bathing when he didn't need to bathe, like at the beginning when he was like, oh, I've already bathed this week, what do you need me to take another bath for? But then
Right.
at the end, he's just doing it regularly. I really, I don't know, I love that. I love when they do that with samurai stories because and frankly, I'm biased because I really love like feudal Japan. I think it's fascinating. Um, it's just different, and I love when people kind of slowly start to understand. And I think from an audience point of view, it helps you understand their customs as well, including, by the way, the part where he was deciding to be Mariko's second, which was devastating. Uh, yeah, that
Yeah.
was rough.
Uh
Yeah,
when we go into her story, that's gonna be a whole something else. But
Yeah.
Blackthorn, seeing his struggle between, his original mission, wanting to go home, and then falling in love not only with Mariko, but also just Japan itself.
yeah,
Because like it is casted to be like this far away, like uh exotic place, and like almost outworldly to people, especially like him, because he hasn't, nobody from England has ever been there. And also his rise to power, I forgot specifically the title that he's given, but the fact that like he's a foreigner, and Lord Toranaga gives him a title and a house and a mistress too, I believe, right? A woman, which was that woman that lost her son and her husband.
The courtesan.
The courtesan, right? The courtesan,
Fuji.
right? Right,
That
Fuji.
part crushed me with her.
That destroyed me, and I also I appreciated how, I mean, at first he was not respectful toward her.
Yeah.
He was kind of like a piece of shit, but the more he understood, the nation's culture, the more he understood her, and the more he respected her, and the more she respected him.
Yeah.
I feel like everybody really came to really respect him, and it really shocked me because the view of foreigners in Japan, especially toward the Portuguese, is that all these guys are just here for themselves. Like Blackthorn really seems to stick out as more of like a humane kind of character, whereas the Portuguese, as much as they just kind of have like their own agenda, and even though Blackthorn has his own agenda, he in the end of the day, falls for Japan, whereas the Portuguese are just always going to be self-serving in the end of the day. And honestly, it's funny enough how we could see how that even can be compared to history, because the British and the Japanese ended up working together later on in history.
Yeah.
So
Blackthorn even admitted to Toranaga himself at the very end that he had an agenda the whole time, and I love that part, by the way. When he was like, "I was going to use the hell out of you to get rich."
Oh yeah,
so
but
cool.
But it was amazing. They were using each other.
Yeah. Yeah.
He wanted his ship, and he wanted to become, and Toranaga wanted to become Shogun. He knew
Clever writing.
That Blackthorn would be the perfect distraction.
Yeah.
So just brilliant all around. And I love Blackthorn, but I hate to say he kind of got fooled in the end, even though it did portray in the end, and I'm not exactly sure if this was a dream or not, where he was old and he was back in England and he was dying.
It was a fever dream, I think.
It was a fever dream.
Yeah, and it was like him letting go of the way he thought that his life should have ended, or whatever.
Right.
And I thought that was pretty powerful. I really I enjoyed that as well.
And also, if you notice, he was holding the cross.
Yeah.
That I believe
the rosary.
Yes, the rosary. Yeah. Yes, which was it showed how much he actually loved her.
Yeah.
I think one of my favorite things about him is, as you mentioned with the fever dream, it is that character development. I think I might be repeating myself, but it is that stubborn. He gets there, he doesn't want to stay, he wants to get rich quick, and he wants to get out of there. And it's that acceptance of the culture around him, like Fuji, for example. That was heartbreaking when he told best nun.
I know.
And he teaches her his customs of how to let go, and he takes her out on the rowing boat, and he lets go of the rosary, and she lets go of the ashes of her husband and her baby, and just that kind of the way he kind of comes to regard them as equals rather than savages.
They both kind of do it in their own ways, and I really love that about him. Yeah,
absolutely. And even through his costumes as well, just like progressively it becomes more traditional, more customary, to show that he is blending in, and he is accepting, and they're accepting of him. And it's a very tragic ending for him. It's a very bittersweet ending, but it's almost just a lovely story to watch. Is his
Definitely.
Development? Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I mean, it's tragic for sure, but I don't mind a tragedy. And since you were talking about costumes as well, when he bumps into his old shipmate at that in the one scene, who's walking out of a bar and he's like hammered, it's felt like at that moment that he kind of started to reject his own society at that, and integrate fully into the more Japanese society. I thought that was a really cool scene.
He seemed to be the only person on that ship that had a moral code.
Yeah.
Because I mean, like you said, the way he was acting, that other sailor, he was drunk. What was he? He was in a brothel, I imagine,
something
or whatever,
like
that tavern, something like that.
I might be wrong. He may even have been like forcing himself on a woman or something like that. I don't really remember.
I think so. I think I don't. Maybe I don't know too, but I think something like that happened. But it really showed that Blackthorn, he was truthfully the only person that came to Japan with a moral quest.
Yeah.
And it kept him there forever.
Great character arc for him.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. So it's amazing to me.
Man, he was really good too. Cosmo Jarvis. I think, admittedly, he could have a little bit better of a stage name. That's a shitty opinion of mine, but I don't know if I'm going to be able to.
That's his name?
Cosmo Jarvis. Yeah. In real life, yeah. But honestly, like he even the part like just little eye movements, little things. He really impressed me. The subtleties of his acting, it really blew me away. And again, I've never seen him in anything, so I love when you get actors who want to prove themselves instead of people who are already established. And I really appreciated that about this show.
He's from New Jersey.
Cool.
Yeah, he's American.
Good for him.
Take that,
Ew.
Brits.
Brilliant. Here we go.
Idiots.
Let's talk about my favorite then. Let's have a look at Mariko.
Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mariko was my favorite, and I don't often say that about female characters, but she was just phenomenal. And I have not cried so hard probably since the Red Wedding, I think. And that entire episode, so spoiler alert, Mariko dies. But it's, you think it's going to be then, and then it's not. She's saved, and then it happens, and oh god, the seppuku scene is
Devastating.
Absolutely devastating. And the reason it's so good is because you know why she's doing it. So
Yep.
she's offered herself up as a sacrifice to sow dissent and to stir up conflict amongst all the warring lords, because everyone's going to go berserk if she dies, because that is how well respected she is. And she uses herself as a weapon. And that's heartbreaking in itself. But what really, really just, what gets me the most about her is the sort of suffering that she's been through and the way she talks about it. And it really cuts deep, because the entire way through the series, she's just begging to be allowed to end her life. And
Right.
No, you still have a purpose to serve. And she does her duty. She serves him diligently. And it's heartbreaking. But to see her exercise her power and influence despite all of that, it's just badass. It's so good. And like I say, the seppuku scene when you know, her chosen second doesn't arrive, and she realizes that that's it, because she's Catholic.
Yes.
Blood Protestant. I always get confused. And that's a sin to kill yourself, essentially. And she,
Yes.
you know, her soul,
it damns your soul.
Right. And as she's coming to this realization, but knowing that she still has to go through this, and Blackthorn, who is completely against it, he's already begged her. What does he say to her? Do it for me.
Like if you can't live for like Japan or yourself, like please live for me. And then later it's I don't know, just heartbreaking. That scene was hard.
Oh God, that had me in tears. That itself, because you're watching him, because she's now slowed right down. Like, she's accepted that her death is now, but she's slowed right down because she's now trying to wrap her head around the fact that her soul is completely damned. And you can see Blackthorn, who does not want this to happen. He really does not want this to happen. But in that moment, he realizes that what Mariko needs is far more important than what he wants. And he's got to be the one to help her do that.
Especially it was because it was just her belief too. Like, you know, earlier in the show, he's taken the crucifix and stomping on it because he doesn't believe in it, but she does, and that's important to him. I thought that was a really cool moment for his character. That scene, man, like her death scene, obviously awful, but like the almost death scene, so much harder. It was, man, that was tough.
Oh, I feel like they like double dipped us with that shit too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. That was awful. No, I'm just agreeing. It's her entire character arc was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And her death served a purpose. Her entire arc served a purpose.
Yeah.
And you just really, really felt that torment within her. And I fucking loved her. And yeah, her death was absolutely heartbreaking, but it made so much sense to the overall story and the overall plot, and that's what made it so impactful. It wasn't needless, it wasn't for show, it was
necessary.
It was necessary.
Yeah.
And the show definitely foreshadowed that too, especially since she was saying that she needed to go. She literally did fulfill that fate, and it's the worst. It's so sad. It truly is a tragedy. Even her relationship with Bintaro, her husband, and how abusive he is, and you know, reckless he is in the relationship. It really goes to show that she really is like struggling. And I completely understand why she confided in Blackthorn, because he was like this mysterious foreign person, and somebody that would arise with new opportunities for her. And she kind of just fell for that, and she kind of needed something to lean, somebody to lean on, somebody to lean on a little. And I think that kind of, not only, came full circle for Blackthorn when he fell for her, but it also came full circle for her. And it, like you guys said, it fulfilled her purpose. And
I think her marriage is a very this is it. And I think her marriage is a really interesting point to raise, because I feel like her demeanor and outlook kind of shifts more positively when she thinks that her husband's died. She kind of like relaxes a little bit, and then when he comes back, she just kind of closes off again. And it's so sad to see.
She's like the perfect Japanese, like, feudal female character, because even like skirting around their own rules and stuff.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Like she's obviously so smart and capable, but she has to confide within their laws and their rules, and like, dealing with those hurdles. She's probably my favorite female written character since probably Ellen Ripley, like you said. I'm glad you mentioned her. Alien's my favorite movie, obviously. Anybody that knows me, I'll tell you, Alien's my favorite movie. So, yeah.
But I think as well, her marriage is just a constant shadow hanging over her, because the whole point of that marriage was to kind of save her life and reforge relationships after the treachery of her father. So that sort of moment where she thought she had that release from it and could, sort of go about as her own person, and then just to have that ripped away from it, absolutely.
It's like he comes back and she's like re-suffocated.
Yes.
It's very, really cool dynamic between them. And, even Buntaro, I really appreciated him. Every character in the show, I don't think, like, yes, obviously the antagonists you're supposed to hate just because they are the antagonists of the show. But, like, Ishido was still great. Buntaro, he kind of came around and ended up helping him, like, pull the ship out of the bay.
Yeah.
Every character was very well written and well constructed.
All in the end, Blackthorn just had all these like unlikely like acquaintances like helping him pull the ship. Like it's almost as if like Mariko's death gave them all this new purpose, because you can even see that it did like, because you can even see Buntaro like is greatly affected by it, and I definitely can imagine that he blames himself for her death too, in some way or some sort of capacity. What I also liked about him too was like at first like you felt like this like respect for him, because you thought like he sacrificed himself for all of them, and it's like wow, like this guy is like such an amazing samurai, like he sacrificed himself for his wife, his lord, like he's such a good guy, and then he just comes back as this like asshole, and it's just like holy shit, bro, like it really fucking is mind-boggling. And I really loved how they put that in the show, and just so good, such a good show.
I really love that, like, I think, especially the Western culture, we tend to over fantasize samurai and like think of them as like these perfect kind of super honorable people. And I really think this show did a good job of showing both the good and the bad side of like feudal Japanese warriors.
Oh yeah, humanized them.
Yeah,
it humanized the shit out of them. Yeah. But Mariko, definitely the most unexpected, but at the same time expected death. But it was perfect. It was perfect. It was perfectly executed, but it was so fucking sad. Like I almost fucking drew tears too, bro. Like I was fucking like devastated by her fucking death. Like I was, bro. Like I usually never cry from fucking shows. Like, but like this fucking almost got to me.
It hits you. Yeah, me too. I was right there. It almost got me too.
Yeah, and honestly, like going like back to an earlier point that Nikki made about this show being better than Game of Thrones. Like I don't know if we can go into that now or like later, but like I honestly I got to agree. Like and not even just like because of like the story arcs that happen. It's just like the political maneuvering is so much better, and I can compare the show to another show that's just like this, and that also gets compared to Game of Thrones. Rome on HBO. One of the best shows. It's a 2-season miniseries. It's one of the best shows I've ever watched.
I need to watch
not that historically accurate, but it's awesome. Like in terms of political maneuvering and just the character arcs, and like just a lot of comparisons that you can make to like Lord Yorinaga and like Caesar. It was fantastic. But this show was definitely, if you're into political, politics, medieval politics especially, this is the show for you.
Or even just
Way over
history
Game of
in
Thrones.
general, because it was really, they took such a long time making it because they wanted to make it historically accurate. Even just in terms of like all the way the women walked, where they kind of took those short little shuffly steps
Yes.
and looked like they were just
Yeah.
gliding everywhere they went. I
Yeah.
thought that was so sick.
And the way they pour the tea, like what
Yeah.
the fuck? Like who the fuck? Like how do you put so
The
much
attention
detail
to
into that?
detail.
The
Yeah.
detail,
Yeah.
exactly right. I love that about this show.
The actors are phenomenal and super underrated for that too. Like,
Yeah.
like going back to what you guys were saying, like these people aren't even known, and the amount of work they put into this show, and who knows how much they were all fucking paid. Like, what's his face was paid the most.
Oh yeah, for sure.
The guy who played Lord
Toranaga,
Toranaga. But
yeah.
these people definitely all deserve way more, and I really hope this show takes off all of their careers. Like they deserve it. They fucking definitely deserve it.
Anna Sawai, the girl that played Mariko, she blew me away the whole time.
She was incredible.
You don't even think of her as an actress. You literally only think of her as her character, and like that's about the highest praise that I can give any actress or actor.
I agree.
Period.
I agree.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what I meant about breaking the immersion, because I think a lot of shows tend to do that these days. But this, I was fully invested. I think I kept joking at one point that it's like the historical documents. That's what it felt like. that's literally Jack's out. But that's what it was like. At no point did it register in my mind until the credits came up. It was like, oh, that's fiction, and it's the TV show in my bedroom. I was so heavily into it, and I loved it. Let's talk about the politics side of things, and let's do a dive in on Toranaga. So, Mike, I'm really interested to hear your opinion too, Jack. But Mike, you're what I would sort of consider the closest thing we have to an expert on politics, certainly within the three of us. So I definitely want to hear your opinion on Toranaga and his sort of political maneuvering. So yeah, talk to us about that.
Well, what I could say about him is that if he existed in modern times, he would crush any living politician that exists today. Anybody, Trump, Biden, anybody. If this guy was running for president, he would know exactly what to do, exactly the sort of distraction to pose on the American citizens to get their vote. He knows exactly what people want. He knows exactly what he wants. And he knows exactly how to get to the power, that he needs. The shogunate is the most powerful position, or yes, it's the most powerful position in all of Japan, in all of feudal Japan. Japan has an emperor, but the military leader is the true power in Japan. And if anybody is made for that position, it is this man. He fooled everybody.
Not only the characters, but he fools he makes you think that he's this. But yeah, right. He fools the audience, and I think it's such great writing. Honestly, I think that's a really that's a whatever the hell it is, whatever the word is. It's such a great thing that it fools the audience. He makes you think that he's the only good samurai, but then he's just another one of them.
Motherfucker, let me tell you something. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this motherfucker commands so much respect that it had me bowing at the screen at some point. You understand?
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah. Well, absolutely, because that's exactly it. It's the way he presents himself, his behavior, the whole way through. You're watching, you're like, this is the only dude who's actually acting in everybody's best interests. Like, what the fuck? Everyone's such a power grabbing arsehole. Because I think he even says to the Shogun as he's dying, when he's he's named as like the
Lord Regent, I think.
Regent, yeah, exactly. He says, this is going to make everybody fight. I don't think this is a good idea. That's exactly what he wants to happen. Mm-hmm. He's always seen to be doing the right thing because he knows how people are going to react. Mm-hmm. He knows. And as long as he is seen to be doing the right thing, people will follow him and people will fight his wars for him. And all of this little background planning that he's been... Oh my God, it blew my mind at the end when he revealed his entire plan and his agenda and that he had succeeded in that. He was the arsehole. He was the one.
And I love that the last shot you get of him, he's all alone, just kind of staring at the horizon. I really thought that was a great last shot of him, just to show like, one, yes, but now he's...
What do you think he's doing?
Plotting, probably.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's all he does.
Yeah.
That is all he does. He is a fucking genius, a tactical genius. He is the smartest man in Japan. He will become the Shogun. He is
Yeah.
the Shogun
Yeah.
at the end. This show is about him.
And
It's
he was
not.
so good. He was so good at like the Hiroyuki Sanada was so good as Toranaga the whole time. Again, you just believe that it's him. You don't think of him as an actor.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And that's a really impressive thing to say for him because he is in everything and he's so bloody good in everything.
Yep.
But I was watching Lord Toranaga. That's what I was looking at on screen. It was
Definitely.
real in that like 50-minute segment until the credits started rolling. I was fully invested. And he was fantastic. Just the way he played everybody. Everything was a moving part in his machine, and it was brilliant.
His screen on
Absolutely.
his command like presence on screen is even when he's not saying anything, just like subtle movements and like the looks that he gives people, like you kind of, I don't know, he just really kind of captures your attention, and
Oh
like
yeah.
that's hard to do as an actor.
Yeah, like Mike says, I would follow him into battle.
Yeah.
No questions. Yeah, mate. Whatever you need.
Oh
Sure.
my god. You want me to kill myself? Please. No, I'm kidding.
I-
No.
Cannon regiment done.
Fine.
Yeah. Anything to
Whatever.
do Lord Toranaga. But that seriously, like you guys said, the commanding of respect. It truly it bleeds into the audience. And
Yeah.
that just shows how phenomenal of an actor this person is. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
he really deserved so much more credit such a long time ago. But now, one of you guys said it before, he's really getting the spotlight on him. And
Yeah.
if there is a continuation of this, if there is a season 2, and if it is about this, and if it is about Lord Toranaga and Blackthorn and what they go through afterward, I really, really, really hope to God that they executed perfectly like how they did in the first season. And even though they're not going to have the source material to do it, I
Which
really hope
worries
that the
me.
writers, it worries the shit out of me too, but I really hope that the writers stay on top of this shit. And is the writer of the book alive? Is he involved with the show?
I don't know. The book was written a long time ago, though.
No, I don't think he is. So let's pull up this article. So Shogun is in talks for seasons 2 and 3. And FX and Hulu have been in talks with the Clavel estate to extend it. Now, my concern is I'm kind of hopeful that this is bait because there are more books by James Clavel. I can't remember off the top of my head. There was Tigan and
It was like Taipan, I think was one of them.
Yeah, and there was another one as well.
Yeah.
But they're set much later. I think one's the sort of like 1800s, and then the other's the sort of early 1900s in Hong Kong. I think it's worth exploring those. And that's what I mean by bait. Are we looking at Shogun seasons 2 and 3 in the form of
Right.
James Clavell's other books,
Right.
or are we looking at a continuation of this story? Because that would worry me. Without the source material, I think what's the saying? You either die like Breaking Bad, or you live long enough to see yourself become Dexter. That's the one.
Oh God. Game of Thrones,
Right.
like, you know.
Oh yeah, and Game of Thrones. Well,
Yeah.
no, that should have gone on
Dexter.
longer.
Well, yeah,
But
Dexter's worse also.
we could
Anyways.
do a whole conversation about Dexter.
Yeah.
But this as a mini series, it's outstanding.
Yeah.
It, as you said, the pacing was excellent. The conclusion was fantastic. It doesn't need to go, in my opinion, it doesn't need to go any further. You've wrapped up all the different character arcs. Where do you go next with this?
That's what I was going to ask. Where can they go next?
Where can they go? I love the tragic ending of Blackthorn. We know he never leaves Japan because Toranaga never lets him leave Japan.
Right.
We know that he's the one on top. He's fulfilled his goals and ambitions. We don't need to see any more than that. We can use our imagination as the audience to kind of work out how that story pans out. If we really wanted to dedicate any time to it, it doesn't need it. And that's why I'm hoping this is a clickbaity title and they're looking at the other books. How do you guys feel about a continuation?
I mean, how do you even do a season 2? If they try a continuation, how do you even do that without Mariko? She was essential to this story. Without her, it would not have been the same because she was easily one of the best characters, and it's not even remotely close.
No.
So how do you do that without her? If they go along with the second book and just said it, I think it takes place in 1841. I looked it up earlier. I think that's right. But like if they do that, cool.
Yeah.
But if they just try to continue just the way that shows and stuff are now, like where I think young writers try to outshine the original source material, and then when they do that, it just makes it worse significantly. If they go that route, I don't think that I won't have very high hopes for it. But
No.
if they stick with the books, sick, I'm down.
I agree. I so what I think that if anything, this might just be hopefully like what Nikki said before, maybe just a teaser to the other two books um, that the author created in the past, because I don't really think that there's much that they can go through after the events of this. Because if I'm wrong, the Edo period is when which is what occurs after the show, after the end of season one,
Yeah.
is the period where Japan starts to isolate themselves from the rest of the world. And while that could be interesting to explore, I don't understand why they would have to do that, being that they kind of already left the show off like on a mysterious note that like that Toranaga's going to become the Shogun. What's at stake after that. I really don't think they have much to do after that. It's just going to be I mean it's kind of I hate to compare it to anything like this, but you know how they had the Jon Snow show planned like after
Oh
season
God,
8
did
of
they
Game of
really?
Thrones. Yeah, they did. Like there's no source material with that. There's no reason or continuation,
No.
there's no reason for any sort of continuation for a story like that. So
Right.
I really don't see any continuation for the story after Shogun season 1 to happen. So I really hope season 2 and 3 are just the different books. Otherwise, I am also going to be a little bit concerned about that too.
Yeah.
I think you're right, though. I think the Edo period is a really interesting topic to explore, but do it as a new concept. It doesn't need to be a continuation of Shogun.
Right.
Do it as its own, its own brand new thing. I just think that the show, the miniseries, has covered the content of the book. It's done it very well. I think far better than a lot of adaptations have done. End it there. Call it quits. I think the minute we start thinking,
How can we milk this?
Right. The minute you start treating something as a cash cow, you've lost your integrity. Your creativity is completely hindered because you're just looking at how do I make more money out of this? Stop.
It'll go downhill.
Yeah, this is almost perfect. It's so close to perfect. I never want to say anything is perfect, but I'm really struggling to find much criticism with this. End it there and just move on to the next project. Absolutely.
Okay, so when you say you're struggling to find any criticism with it, what did you not like about this show, or at least maybe not like is not the right way, but what did you think? Was there anything that you thought was lacking, or anything like that?
I'm gonna have to edit this big long pause out. I'm trying to think now.
I don't think you're gonna have to edit it out at all. I think the fact that yeah, right. I mean, yeah, I think the fact that you're having such trouble thinking of anything. I will say that I don't, and I was saying this to Mike earlier. I don't really remember much of the score. Honestly, like I don't
Interesting.
even remember kind of hearing anything except like the intro I enjoyed because it really put me in the mood, and I love the intro. The way that they did the Zen garden with the ship sailing through it, like that was tight, and it put me in the mood for the show generally. But like the score overall, I don't even remember it. So I would say that it was maybe a little bit lacking in that regard. But other than that, like I really thought that because it's not like the beginning of Band of Brothers, I can still hear that theme song in my head.
Yeah.
But yeah, exactly. But this one I can't think of any of the music specifically. So I would say that maybe that was lacking. But if that's like the main criticism that I have from the show, that's a pretty damn good show.
Right. That's like the most minor inconvenience,
Right.
And honestly, like whatever music was playing clearly wasn't that bad because it didn't like block me away from the important shit that was going on in the show. If anything, I guess it just kept on with the immersion, which is good enough, for a score, so you can't even give it that bad of a rating. Like if that's the worst thing, that's not even that bad. It's not even bad at all. So, I'm sure whoever fucking did the score, probably very talented people behind that, the musicians and everything that were behind that,
I think it was Atticus Ross, actually.
Oh, wow.
9 Inch Nails, yeah.
Oh, really? You know what? I think you told me that.
Yeah, because Trent Reznor's done a lot of film and television. So, yeah, no, I remember seeing that it was Atticus Ross. I remember seeing it on the credits and thinking, okay, that makes sense.
Cool.
Let's look at the opening credits, especially if you're kind of here, if you're here and you haven't seen it and you've just heard a bunch of spoilers. Let's look at the opening.
Go watch it anyway.
Absolutely.
At this point, you went through 3 massive spoilers in this podcast. If you haven't watched it already, go fucking watch it now.
So let's give this a watch.
Yeah. I know I already said this, but I really think it's a cool visual of the boat sailing through the sand. It's, I don't know.
Absolutely.
Very creative.
Yeah, so fuck you, Jack. This fucking score is awesome. You don't know what the fuck you're talking about.
Okay, I'm gonna give it 3 days, and I'm gonna ask you to hum this tune for me.
I will.
Yeah, we'll see.
I will.
We'll see.
I reckon I could because I had it in my head earlier. But either way,
I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. Like, I'm not saying it's bad at all. It just is not as memorable to me. And like, this is just the opening track. I'm talking about the music through the whole show.
Absolutely.
You know?
But I just think this is very much, it just makes my hair stand on end.
Right?
At the beginning of every episode. Absolutely.
It just started peacefully, and now it just turned into like shit's burning. Like,
yes.
Fuck you, Jack. Fuck you.
Jack,
no, look, but it's burning. Like, that doesn't have anything to do with the score. Like, yes, it kind of prepares you that there's something more nefarious about to start. I love samurai masks and helmets and everything. That shit gets me amped.
That's sick.
And it's nice and relatively quick. It doesn't like jerk you around at all. It just gets you ready to go for some samurai stuff. Good intro.
Right. I think before you were going to compare it to Game of Thrones, like it brings you to one side of the map and then the other.
I'm literally not talking about the intro as a whole. I'm literally just saying the music. Like the intro to Game of Thrones is very memorable.
No, yeah, you're right. I know. I'm just fucking with you.
No argument at all. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, shut up, bitch.
Yeah. So, I mean, again, very creative. It put me in the mood for the show, and I guess really, what else can you say, or what else do you need? I guess from an intro, it just this score overall, I guess, slightly unmemorable for me, but I don't think that it was bad.
It wasn't bad at all. It definitely wasn't bad. I agree, but it also, I agree, it wasn't memorable, and like if that's like we were saying before, if that's the worst thing that came out of the show, and I think you said this before, Jack, then clearly the show wasn't a bad show at all.
Right.
So
I would say it's an excellent show overall. I really, like I said, I'm going to give it a few years, give it another watch here and there, and if it is as good, like on second viewing, third viewing, however many times I end up watching it, and I'm going to watch it again, then it could very well overtake Band of Brothers as my favorite miniseries of all time, and that's a hard thing to break.
My favorite is John Adams. I don't think anything can beat that for me.
Okay, so we've established that perhaps the overall soundtrack was lacking, but let's talk about the villains, or the villain in this show, and particularly who that is. Jack, you had some thoughts on this one.
Yeah, I mean, like I was just kind of saying in our little break, is that I think that a villain, I think a story is only as good as its villain, and I think a hero is only as good as its villain, and I think that's why Batman is the best superhero of all time, because he has the best villain list, period. Like, Batman's got a lot, but I think that's why Spider-Man is maybe the second most popular superheroes, because he also has great villains. I think E02 did a great job as a villain, but he wasn't so memorable to me that, like, he didn't seem that villainous, I guess. He just kind of seemed like more antagonistic than anything, which, I mean, is really, I guess, all you need in a story like this, because it is about more political leanings and political maneuvers.
He was pretty desperate, if anything.
Yeah, I mean, he was just another Shogun trying to seek power, and like, that's fine. I thought he did a great job. The actor did a great job. I mean, it was kind of, I would say the real villain would probably be like the difference in society for Blackthorn between English culture and Japanese culture is like that, like fitting in and learning their roles was like the real villain overall. And I thought that was really pretty cool, honestly.
Interesting. That's interesting.
What about how would you feel about Toranaga being a villain.
Yep, I would agree with that.
I would agree with that too.
He was certainly an antagonist, which I do think it's important to talk about the difference. Like, he's not a villain; he's an antagonist, because I think that there is a difference. Like in
Agreed.
Sicario, I think Emily Blunt is actually the antagonist of that movie. But yeah, I would agree. I think that's a great way to put it.
I suppose I'm coming from the perspective, and I completely agree with you. There's definitely a huge difference between villain and antagonist. But I think as far as Toranaga is concerned, he's not. He's kind of like a sort of passive protagonist throughout the story. As you're watching it as a viewer, and then right at the end, when his true intentions are revealed, you suddenly think about what he's sacrificed for his own personal gain. And his plans with Blackthorn. And I think he even says, like, I'm going to wait for him to rebuild his ship and I'm going to blow it up again. I'm going to sink it again. And we'll just keep
right.
He's never leaving Japan. So while everybody, we have our antagonists in, this sort of like opposing lords, I feel like Toranaga is possibly the main villain because it's a power grab. Right. And it's almost a betrayal for us as the viewer, because you think he's on, you kind of think that everybody's on that side. And then right at the end, when you find out that all of this loss that we've had to experience, Mariko particularly, I took that very personally. To find out that actually it was him, Puppet Master, all along.
Just you're right.
Own personal gain.
I like that. That's cool. He even let Hiromatsu die, the old guy. I love that guy, by the way. He had like the samurai voice of all samurai voices. That guy was cool. But yeah, he let people that he loved and cherished die just so that he could grab power. And you're right. I didn't really think about it that way. That's cool. I like that.
I love a good chat about villains.
Me too, woman. Me too.
So overall, on a scale of 1 to 10, let's stick it that way. Oh, what was that face?
That's a tough one because I really enjoyed this show, and I feel like it's just going to go up over time. So I don't know if I'm going to be able to like really set my score for it in stone at this point, but okay.
Well, that's boring. Okay. So make one up.
Okay. I'm going last then. You guys go ahead.
Mike.
I'm going to go with a 9.5 out of 10.
Ooh.
It's pretty high.
Any context around that, or you just done?
No. I mean,
to explain.
Hey, the context is there. If you've seen the show, I think most people would agree it's a fucking fantastic show from start to finish, and I just was absolutely mind blown in the end. So I loved it. I definitely loved it. One of the best shows, or if not the best show so far of 2024.
Yeah.
I would agree with that. I'm kind of fluctuating between an 8 and a 9. I don't like to claim anything is perfect. It's certainly high up. One of the things that I did really sort of love was the kind of use of the fisheye lens when they were especially with the dialogue scenes, to kind of block out that background noise, so you were really focused on characters speaking and what was going on. And it just the cinematography itself, just the way it draws you in. Like I say, overall the characters were strong, the story, the writing was strong, and the conclusion was strong. That's where everybody seems to fall down. It's the conclusion of the story, and these guys nailed it. I suppose, okay, if I was going to come up with a criticism, I think the whole John's fever dream, that was very, and I know it was ambiguous on purpose, but
a little throwing.
It was. It maybe just needed a little bit more explanation, not too much, because I do like a show that does not hold your hand all the way through.
Same.
But it was a little bit jarring. Where is that? What is this symbolizing? I suppose maybe a second watch, aside from me Googling it, I probably wouldn't have needed to. But just that kind of left me thinking too much in that final episode rather than really paying attention. But yeah, I would say an 8 or a 9, absolutely.
Okay, I think that's fair, and you're right, because I felt the same way in the last episode. I was too busy thinking about what he was doing as an old man to really consider exactly what was going on at the time. You're right. I that's a great way to put it. Honestly, I really like that, and I kind of tend to agree. I'd probably give it a low 9, maybe like a 9.1 to start. But like I said, I feel like the more I watch it, the more I'm probably going to appreciate it. And even the way you said with the fisheye lens, with the filter for when they were having conversations, it felt like you were looking at it through like a telescope instead of like through a modern camera, and it kind of gave it that like slightly more vintage
Perfect.
feel,
Yes.
which I really appreciated. Like it was the cinematography was excellent. The sets were excellent. The costumes were spectacular. The samurai armor looked amazing the whole show. Every kimono, I was jealous because I wanted. I was even thinking about like, oh, that's the one that I don't want. The black and silver one, hell yeah, that's what I would get if I ever go to Japan. Like stuff like that. It was so good. It kept me on my toes the whole time. The dialogue was phenomenal. Even the simplicity of the dialogue, which I like. Fuji, best nun. When that's all that he knew in Japanese, man, that's yes, the Mariko seppuku part was difficult, but the best nun was the closest that I got to actually like crying in this show. Just something about the simplicity of dialogue I really tend to appreciate. And like what else? I mean, there's really not anything else that I have to criticize about it. The structure, the pace. It was honestly even like when the cannons kind of crushed those one samurai and it was showing like their mangled arms and mangled legs. Like,
Oh my god, that
looked really
shocked
good.
the shit out of me.
Yeah. So even the special effects were great. This is really just a great show all around. I'd probably give it a 9.1. So I would put it in like the upper echelon of like spectacular shows.
Yeah.
Because I don't give 9s very easily, I would say.
Nor do I.
Yeah.
I'm usually highly critical of shit. It's just that so far there really can't be anything thrown at us right now that's bad. I mean, we did the Fallout show before. We all like that. This show,
we all liked it, and we still gave it like 7s, I think, or something like that. So
yeah,
yeah.
Mm-hmm. But this show was, I mean, you can tell there was a lot of love put into this. There was, it wasn't just thrown together. Yes, respect to Japanese culture, especially,
and to the book, like frankly, in general. I really think that they did a great job all around. It was really.
They did even the things that they didn't include the book, because like I didn't read the book, but I knew that there was like that bath scene where he is given a bath and you're supposed to see him be given a bath by 3 women, or something like that. And aren't they supposed to comment on like the size of his penis or something like that?
But yes, but I understand why they took scenes like that out. Like it wasn't really necessary to like any
it wasn't
story.
necessary,
and
but
when
they
you're limited on time, yeah, exactly. But they still hinted at it,
which is like kind of like a paying tribute to the book kind of thing. So cool. You can appreciate things like that. I think book readers would definitely appreciate that.
Yeah, honestly, great show. I can't wait to watch it again. The only thing that I will say is that I tend to like after I watch Breaking Bad or something, I kind of like to have it on as background noise while I'm like cooking dinner for myself or something like that. And because most of this show is actually in Japanese, which by the way, I'm so happy that they had to have it in Japanese instead of just like Japanese accents instead. I really appreciated that.
I agree.
And they even explained that the parts in English are actually in Portuguese, but they just auto translated that for us. I thought that was smart.
Right.
It's going to be difficult as a background noise kind of a show, but that's not really that bad of a thing. So.
Right. Because you need to pay attention, and it honestly, not that you need to, it makes you focus in because of how good it is.
Yeah.
So.
Absolutely.
I enjoyed this. Honestly, great show. If you haven't seen it, go watch it. If you watched this before having watched it, shame on you, because we said spoilers. Maybe we need to emphasize that a little more strongly next time, but still, like, excellent show. You should go watch it.
Absolutely.
If you haven't watched it, fuck you.
You're such an asshole. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what we expect from you, Mike. Yeah. But that's why we love you. Brilliant. Yeah. Well, thank you again, guys. I absolutely love talking about this stuff with you. We've done Fallout, we've done Shogun. I think there's a lot coming up for us to talk about. Where are we? May, June. So we've got The Boys season 4 coming. Okay. That's going to be phenomenal. We've got House of the Dragon season 2. There's plenty. So thank you. Oh, go on.
I was going to say, if anybody has any suggestions for things that we should watch, Absolutely. I know we're very fresh as podcasters, but I love suggestions, and I like actually kind of trying to interact with anybody who may be listening. So if you have any suggestions, like let us know, because cool, I'm down.
Oh yeah, we'll watch anything. We will watch any old crap. Absolutely.
Literally anything.
Yeah, throw it our way.
Perfect. Well, thank you again. Thank you to anybody who's been watching this. As Jack says, any suggestions, leave them in the comments, and we will see you guys next week, provided my PC does not break again.
Thanks for listening.
Take care.